So in this video I'm going to be installing a laser diode and a micro LED into Darth Talons lightsaber, and I'm also going to be fitting some LEDs into the base, but I'm probably not going to be soldering them on video just because I suck at soldering. So I'm not sure which order I'm going to be uploading these videos, but I've basically just done a video for the Dark Souls hand, and I go over the glass paints in there. In order to make these lightsabers, you can't just use, well, to make them well, you can't just use a LED and a printed, saber blade, because for starters they're not very red. They will warp very fast, so if this is in her hand like that, then after a week it will be like that. So you have to put an acrylic core inside, and anything below 2mm, anything below 3mm is not strong enough. So if this was a 2mm core, it'd just be as flexible as this. You've got to fit that inside that basically. So that means you have to hollow these out at 98% accuracy. You can't use lychee for that. It doesn't hollow thin enough. So you have to hollow in Chitterbox. I tend to use Chitterbox all the time now, but it's much better at hollowing and stuff like that. Basically, there's a lightsaber. There's almost a 3mm cutout in the center of this saber blade, and it's perfect. So all I have to do is put a little bit of clear coat on this acrylic rod and start to feed it down into the lightsaber. Because this model is a little bit smaller than my original build of this model, I had to sand down the rod a little bit. It doesn't matter if it goes all cloudy, because when you use a little bit of just normal clear coat, varnish, whatever, it brings it back up to a shine. And you have to have it kind of sort of wet and slippery to be able to get it to go down to the end of the saber. If you try and shove it in dry, what will happen is it will get so far down, and then it will just snap this in half. It will just push them apart. It will just tear it apart. So yeah, normally what I do for this is I just get a piece of sandpaper, I just hold the rod and I just move it backwards and forwards, and it takes about 10 minutes to sort of taper the front of the rod down slightly, enough that it'll fit inside the tube. Even with an acrylic core, if you were to just use an LED inside the lightsaber, the light, even in pitch black, only comes down to about here, and then the rest of it's just dark. So I found LEDs pretty ineffective. That's when I started looking into laser diodes, and the effect that you get from the lightsaber is just fantastic. And you'll also notice that the 3mm rod connects straight up to the lens. So I will trim this off, but there's no point in trimming it off yet, because I wanted to make sure that I was happy with the colour. So this is glass paint again. So this is some vitriol crimson glass paint, and I just thin that down with a little bit of cellulose thinner, and I just airbrushed it onto the lightsaber, and it's worked fantastic. I was so impressed with it that I had to take my lightsaber out and do that one as well. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with using the laser diode, and the light is just a billion times better. It's hard to explain, and the pictures really don't do it justice, because it looks pink and it's not. It looks like a sort of a white, it's hard to explain, that you can see the light moving down, and you can see it sort of like, it's like it's alive. You can see it bouncing around inside it. It's quite mesmerizing, and that's because there's a blocker at the end. So the acrylic rod, I put a dab of black paint on the end, and that's to stop the laser beam just from coming out the end of the lightsaber. Otherwise there'd be a red dot on the floor and everything. So it's bouncing backwards and forwards, and yeah, it looks great. It looks like it does on the movies. Well, as close as you're going to get in a model sort of thing. So obviously fitting that inside here is kind of a problem. It's not if you print this particular model at, I believe it's 120% that I did mine. That makes a huge increase. This lightsaber would be about like that, about that thick. So this actual hand didn't come like this. It was one whole object. I ran a plane cut through that in Mesh Mixer, and then I printed them out with the supports on this side and the supports from here, so that these two pieces are completely flush. There's not, not been any supports on there to damage the join, so it fits together like a perfect. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Milliput. So this is Milliput terracotta. It doesn't really matter what Milliput you use, they're all more or less the same, apart from the white one. The Milliput white is a much finer one, and it leaves sort of white chalky marks on everything. This one also leaves stains all over your fingers. So I'm just going to probably use a pair of tweezers. What I'm trying to do is just put a little bit of the Milliput around the inside so that I can squish the laser up against it and it will stay in place while I glue it. And this will also help seal up any gaps, because once everything's sealed inside this hand, I'm going to fill it with some epoxy resin. And obviously if it's not sealed up, it will just pour out the front. There it goes. Test the angle of this laser. I'm just going to check that in the other room. I'm going to insert this LED. And there we have it. That got there in the end. So I'm just trying to get the small LED in position. I don't want that little LED to be right in the end. I want it to be a little bit further back. I have to be quick testing this because these little LEDs need a resistor. So I'm going to take this middle port. And I'm going to poke it down in there. Okay. So I'm just going to go and get my soldering iron ready. So I've just finished soldering the wires together, and it was a bit fiddly, but got there. I need to get some wire cords. So I've just went to the newsagents and got some super glue. Perfect. So I've got some SLA printer resin here and an old brush. And blend that into the hand. This is a 400 and something nanometer laser pen. So the lasers worked perfectly, but the small LED has pulled back further, and there's not much I can do about Oh, I don't think there is anyway. So yeah, I was going to cut that out, but yeah, I've left it. I'm going to leave that footage in just so you see what happens if you don't check things at every stage. So the small LED that was at the back dropped backwards because it wasn't really, there's nothing to stop it from falling backwards. And through all the handling and stuff, it fell back all the way to the hand, which meant that there was no light coming out at the end. So I had to improvise. I could have just left it, but yeah, not me. I used a scalpel and I just wedged it in there a little bit, and then I just whacked it, and it was enough to fracture it all the way through where I glued it. So 2 halves again, and I pulled out that small LED, pulled that wire out, and basically shoved one of these down the end instead, so that's not going to fall backwards. Yeah, and now I've got 4 wires, so I'll just solder these together at the top, and I checked the alignment of the laser and it's perfect, so everything's working great, and the way I wanted it to work. And I've also gave the hand a quick sanding down, and it's nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do later is give this a coat of primer, and then yeah, I can get on with the rest of the model, because I couldn't really start painting the model properly until I'd sorted out this saber hand. I'll do the base. Solid. So yeah. I've painted this with black multiple times, but it might not be enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a quick coating of thick paint around the inside, and then I'm going to put the LEDs in place. So I need to check the arrangement roughly. So small one, large one. Two, and 2. Yep. I'm just going to solder these now. So these are LEDs to light up the base crystals. So this is one of the base crystals. And again, this is just red printer resin that I've then painted with some glass paints. But to make these look a little bit more realistic and a bit better than just plain crystals, I used a little bit of the kiber texture gel, which is basically sand textured gel, and it's like fake sand, so it's white and light passes through it, so it's semi-transparent, and it's in a transparent gel medium, so you can just paint this on and then go in with some more of the glass paints and just sort of really thickly paint it on around the sand area, and it will make it so it's not so sharp and it's the same colour as everything else. It just makes it look a little bit better, I think. You may need to go around with a scalpel and scrape some of it off to make them fit. Right, this one almost fits. It probably wants a little bit taken off around the bottom here. Yeah, you get the idea. And obviously when it's got the LED underneath here, it looks pretty cool. So yeah, I'm just going to do those now. I'm not sure if it's too clever to put this on here, but that's not. So I was a little worried there because it wasn't lighting up, but it's just because the battery is not powerful enough to power that many lights. So I'm just going to very quickly put a blob of glue from my glue gun onto each one of these and just squish these into place. So I'll just be back in a moment. So this is what it looks like with all the LEDs glued in place. And I also added a little wiring block. once everything's finalised, that will be glued in place like so. And there'll be another connector here, so that's why I've made this all nice, so it's got a nice fitting. And this will just slot in there and connect up, and it will power up to the lightsaber. And disconnecting, I will just disconnect the power. But this will be one whole unit. So the power supply is here. So pretty nifty. Sorry about all the lights if they're too powerful. I've got some new lights, you see, and some of them are a little bit too bright. So I'm going to go test this out and see how it looks. So yeah, everything checks out, all the LEDs are working, all the spots light up correctly. So yeah, I just need to drill a hole through this bottom part here and install one of these fittings, which will stick up through the base, and then I will put on another fitting on the other side, like I said, so it just clips in. Or I might use one of these, so there'll be one of these. I will cut these spiky bits off at the edge, so I'll just do that now actually. Scalpel. So yeah, now I can fit one of these into one, whichever section, and then it will just, because it's not meant to be pulled apart anyway, but you could just push this boot down and it will just connect the fittings together. So yeah, I've also got some pretty cool multicolored LEDs. So these are remote control LEDs. This is for Thrall, so his hammer, it's I need it to light up 360, so this has got LEDs on both sides. You can't see anything with these lights, they're too powerful. Just like tinkering, so yeah, like I said, I've got some cool different things to play with over the next few weeks and stuff. But I'm mainly going to be concentrating on getting Darth Talons out of the way, finishing off Dark Souls. Now that I've got all my gadgets, I can finish off the Hunter model, and I'm also going to be starting on Thrall, which is going to be a massive project. So yeah, I hope you find some of that useful, and I will catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.